the best thing, that's probably one of your questions here, that I believe in is relationships.
Sure.
Period. Amen. Everyone says it's all about price. It's not about price.
No.
Price plays some part, but in the big picture, it's all about relationships. And, I have a lot of them. And, when the going gets tough, you can lean on your relationships and you'd be supported. If it's about price, somebody's going to go somewhere else.
Hello, and welcome to the Elevator Careers Podcast, sponsored by the Allred Group. I am your host, Matt Allred. In this podcast, we talk to the people whose lives and careers are dedicated to the vertical transportation industry to inform and share lessons learned, building upon the foundation of those who have gone before to inspire the next generation of elevator careers. Today our guest is Scott Akin, owner of Elevator Sill Solutions by Archi-Tread, a manufacturer and installer of elevator cab and hoistway sills. Scott has been in the elevator industry over 30 years, starting at the bottom and working his way up in manufacturing. Scott first worked for a family-owned elevator manufacturing business, and after selling, he started his own company with the intent to reinvent how this industry approaches the challenges with elevator sills, both new and existing. Scott fully understands the value of creating and maintaining relationships and is a firm believer in being honest, even though it may not be what the customer wants to hear. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be able to talk to you. It was great to meet you in Reno at the last NAEC conference, and I'm excited to be able to talk a little bit more about your career, your business, and always like to start out with just finding out, how did you get started in the elevator industry in the first place?
Actually, through my wife. Her family started an elevator company, manufacturing company. So actually it was her grandfather back in 1939, I believe it was.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So there's 3 generations of manufacturing going on, elevator manufacturing.
Well, is that company still in business, or?
Yes. We sold that company in 2013. That was after 79 years.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where I went to school during the day.
Okay.
Started going to college when I was, 25 maybe, and started working there at nights, literally sweeping the floor. That was my job.
So this was after you got married, or about that time when you were dating? Or?
No, when we first started dating.
Okay.
So by trade, I'm a baker.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, right. So I had spent all through high school and the years after high school in baking, and kind of got burnt out on that. So it was time for a new career. Didn't expect it to be elevators, but it was a job at night, and I fell in love with the manufacturing. Absolutely.
What was it that you fell in love with specifically? Was it just the technical complexity, the
machinery?
Yeah.
The machinery, and I remember it like it was yesterday. They call it a shear, but it's a piece of equipment that takes metal and just cuts it.
Sure.
And I was hooked from that day on. So that's my passion.
Right.
Is manufacturing. It really is. The equipment is phenomenal. And then add to that the uniqueness of elevators, and that's all it took for me.
Yeah. So, it sounds like you kind of caught the bug early on. How long from sweeping floors, to actually catching that bug? What was the kind of the time frame there?
So I started in 91. And I think probably by 93, I did 2 years of schooling. And after that, I said, that's enough. And started full-time during the day in the shops.
Right. So once you started in the shop, what was it? You obviously running the shear or something like that, but what was your first line of duty?
So my first line of duty for actually the first few years was a helper. Like I said, sweeping floors, and you work on the back of the machine, just catching material and whatever, and the typical progression for any machine shop is you're a helper, and then one day you get a chance to go on the front side of the machine and maybe cut 1,000 pieces, and that's really what happens. And then you get a trust from the supervisor that, hey, you can actually run this machine, and you grow from there.
Wow.
And then you just keep graduating from a shear to a press brake to a punch machine, and
Sure.
I at least I have some coordination and some brain power, so was able to, I don't want to say excel, but able to, work the machines, and that was recognized. So,
Well, and it sounds like you had that desire, right? You didn't want to just keep catching parts for the rest of your life. You wanted to
right,
grow and learn and learn everything is what it sounds like.
right. And in the baking business, when I left, we were actually more of we were manufacturing cookies. It wasn't,
Sure. Sure.
the old sweatshop, rolling bread. It was, automated machinery.
Sure.
So scheduling, and so it kind of complemented what I was doing, just different machinery.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just a different product, right? You're bringing
Right.
out cookies. You're not going to eat your elevator parts, but probably a lot of the same processes.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, I fell in love with it. And um, then one of the guys that was kind of running production, we actually brought him down from Boston, because we had facilities in Boston, Washington, and Jersey was the main
Okay.
manufacturing. We brought him down. He was down for a little bit, and then he moved on. So that kind of opened up the opportunity for production management, and
Cool.
now overseeing the shops. And from there, it just was limitless. And then out in the field, getting the opportunities to go out in the field. We did a lot of installations in the field.
That's what I was going to ask you. So you were manufacturing, I'm assuming caps, or were you doing kind of all of it?
Everything you see when you walk in an elevator. So
Okay.
you walk through a set of doors, two sets of
Sure.
doors, the frame, the entrance frame, and
Sure.
then the box you ride in. Now, we don't do the
Right.
platform. We didn't get involved with any of that.
Right.
And we grew substantially when my father-in-law took over the company, bought it
Hmm.
from his father-in-law.
Okay.
We grew substantially from that point on, and really gained a reputation for high end. And um, it was neat because we did a lot of high end projects, which
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
fun, and challenging.
Well, there's probably a lot of custom type of work. I'm assuming that you were, I mean, if you're doing the interior of the cab, probably a lot of decorative, like you said, high end, uh, probably fancy hotels and office buildings, and where it really, really matters what it looks like. It's not just,
Right.
standard issue.
Yep. Yeah. I mean,
Very cool.
again, we did Statue of Liberty, which was really neat.
Very
That's one of the
cool.
marquee.
So
UN, we did the UN, and a lot of stuff in Washington, a lot of buildings in Washington.
very cool. Very good. So like I say, the interior of that, I talked to a guy just a week or two ago that talked about being on the kind of the engineering team of coming up with the the Statue of Liberty. Um, probably the underpinnings of what you were building. So
Right.
very cool.
So was that Liberty Elevator, or?
It was Tower Elevator. One of the guys that worked there,
Oh,
they do some rack and pinion stuff. And anyway, he specs out.
got it.
I'll have to get him on the show and we can talk more about it. But small
Okay.
world. Yeah.
Well, ironically, there was two generations that did the Statue of Liberty. So my father-in-law and company Liberty Elevator,
Oh, okay.
they're right. We did it the first go around. I think it was 92,
Okay.
and then the next generation stepped in, and we did it again in, I don't remember now, 2010 or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know which generation he was a part of. I'll have to ask that question.
All good though.
Yeah. 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 So who were some of your biggest mentors in those early days? Sound like your father-in-law maybe was one of those.
So he was a strong figure.
Hmm.
Probably we brought. Uh, he had the hindsight to bring in a family business consultant, and
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah, and that was a real eye opener for me. And actually, I think
Tell me more
for
about that. In what way was that opening your eyes?
um, just his approach. The guy
Okay.
was Jim Hutchinson from Regeneration Partners.
Okay.
Uh, I credit all my success to him. I really do.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
big.
tremendous, tremendous impact on me personally
Sure.
and on our whole company.
Hmm.
Um, he came from a family business,
Sure.
um, huge family business, and very well off. Did not to be, but this was his passion, and
Right.
gave me a lot of tools, taught me a lot of lessons. Hit me over the head a lot of times with stuff that you just don't want to hear, but
What you need
after
sometimes, right? I mean,
you need it, yeah. You know, sometimes you got to be hit over the head, and um, very helpful, very
so you
helpful.
were, I assume, in operations management by that time. So
Yeah,
um, you were the one that probably got hit in the head the most because you were probably in charge of kind of how operations were going. Is that correct?
that's true. Definitely
Yeah.
true. And again, the family dynamic is the other thing. We had, I guess, five family members, and then probably two or three that you weren't immediate family, but family. And the
Yeah. Yeah.
dynamic is very interesting, and you don't realize it until someone points it out to you.
Well, I can't even imagine. I mean, and I've talked to several people, here on the show that some of them 5 generations worth, and the family dynamic has got to be intense at times. You know, just working face to face and probably getting in arguments, and then you sit down at Thanksgiving dinner, and I mean, can you have Thanksgiving dinner with some of these relations? I don't know how did that affect your family in that
So to your
situation?
point, it was 24/7.
Yeah,
You know, you're in in the office 12 hours, and you'd come home, and my wife was part of the business, and Sunday dinners was pasta, and financials, and all that. But without going crazy and off on a tangent, but just as you said, fifth generation. Some people, they just naturally become president. They have no idea what it's like to run a business, right? Or or they just get compensation even though they're not part of the business,
sure.
and that's a dynamic that affects a lot of people.
Well, and that's the risk, right? Because if you got entitled children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, whatever that don't care about the business, but they want their piece of the pie. I mean, that I know that can sink your business if
Right.
you let it, right?
So to your point, for me, the real eye opener was when I took over or started my company.
Okay,
And I told this to my father-in-law. I said, whenever I made a decision, I always had the family best interest in mind. But at that time, my job was to almost like just process, get things, move them along, move it, move
sure.
it, move it. Then came the time I owned my own business, and when I had to go spend $100,000 on a piece of equipment, it might have took me 2 weeks to make a decision.
Oh, easily.
Where, you know, where I would say it took me 2 days because it was someone else's money. Though I believed at the time I was doing the right thing and doing the best thing, right? But until you actually spend the money out of your pocket, it's again that's a dynamic. I didn't realize until
Sure.
I was on my own, and
Yeah.
um,
You're feeling the full
it's
weight of it, right? Before it was like, okay, I'm doing it probably in consultation with these others, but if something goes south, we're all in it together, so I don't have to bear the full brunt. But yeah, if you're in business by yourself now, there's
yeah,
no, cousin, aunt, uncle, grandpa to bear that with you.
correct,
Yeah.
correct. But until you step out of that world, you don't realize that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. And so you've been in business in your own business how long now?
So 2014. So that's when we officially opened up. So what's that? 9 years, almost 10
Okay.
years now.
Yeah, yeah. Good for you. Good for you. So back to, I guess, your early experience. I mean, you mentioned, those big decisions and the weight, that's on you, but what were some of the other, I don't know, maybe difficult lessons you learned early on?
Um, Good question. Some of them are, again, in our industry, everybody wants everything now. And we got extremely busy, extremely tremendous backlogs. And, you end up embellishing the truth on a lot of things. And a lot of times, like,
Promise a little bit more, you're saying? Like
yeah,
it's
yeah, it'll
coming
be
in
there in
2 weeks
4 weeks.
instead of three.
Yeah, 2 weeks, and it's actually 4 weeks, and so you believe it. You start believing yourself,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
um, and that doesn't work. And that's one
No,
thing, I tell everybody straight up now. Embellishing the truth, lying, whatever you want to call it, just doesn't work. The best thing, that's probably one of your questions here, that I believe in is relationships.
sure.
Period. Amen. Everyone says it's all about price. It's not about price.
No,
Price plays some part, but in the big picture, it's all about relationships. And, I have a lot of them. And, um, when the going gets tough, you can lean on your relationships and you be supported. If it's about price, somebody's going to go somewhere else.
oh, sure. So tell me, what is the biggest key factor in preserving, creating, maintaining those relationships?
Just communication. Use a phone. I mean, in our day of email and text messages, I can't tell you how many people I can tell you a handful that I've picked up the phone, called, and I get a text message as the phone's ringing, text me, you know,
Sure.
communication, just eye to
Yeah.
eye, like we're doing. People don't do that anymore. Pick up the phone.
Not
I
enough,
can't tell
right?
you how many people are amazed at how often I pick up the phone, you know, because I
Yeah.
want to talk to them. I want to know what's going on. I want to understand if they have a problem or if they need help with something. You know, you can't get that message across in an email or a text message all the time,
Sure.
you know,
Agreed.
let alone talk about family or talk about, friends or business or how's things going, you know. Um,
Yeah.
we move at such a rapid pace that I found it better to, I don't want to say slow down, but just communicate with people. And
Right.
that in itself builds relationships. And then add to that, if you can help them, that's even better.
Sure. Well, what you talked about a minute ago is, being able to trust, and you talked about just being honest, tell it like it is. What was it that you kind of helped you learn that? Was it something that blew up that you're like, okay, we're not going to stretch the truth in this, ever?
No, several things. One was my father-in-law had tremendous relationships, and to this day, and it was not always about money. And once we sold the company, and I was with the new owners for about 6 months, and in their opinion, it was all about the money. And that's probably one of the main reasons I left. Is I wasn't about to throw my reputation, because I had an excellent reputation, um, and just throw that in the mud because they were worried about money. And the business was built on relationships, and then you want me to throw that away? And I wasn't going to do that. And to this day, even if it cost me a few nickels or dimes, to help someone out, I'll do it, because somewhere down the road, you hope you'll get some payback on that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that is one thing I find super amazing, I guess, about this industry is people's willingness to pay it forward, to
Yeah.
to give, whether it's advice, whether it's some time, to take a phone call, like you say, rather than just not. Um, from what I've seen, the relationships are valued, but, and I think that's I think, who knows, maybe it's a generational thing, but I think it's important to keep going, especially in the industry, that we have. It just seems like that's a critical component.
Yeah. And in this business, there's so many potential pitfalls or problems that arise because there's so many different levels of communication from an
Sure.
architect, what an architect wants
Mm-hmm.
and puts on a piece of paper. And by the time it gets through all the approval processes and all the issues and all the surveys, and, there's bound to be challenges.
Sure.
And, if you just ignore those challenges, you're not going to, in my opinion, not going to be successful. But if you work together as a team and say, hey, okay, I missed this. How can we fix it together? And we'll make it up on the next job, or we'll do this, differently, or,
Sure.
but work together, not, hey, this is your problem. You're supposed to be the expert. You fix it,
Yeah,
and
that's a good point. It's a good point. I did a little bit of construction, like, college time frame during and before a little bit. And one of my old bosses used to say, the only problem is when you can't fix. And he was a cement contractor. And I used to just chuckle at that because I know he had some doozies where, cement goes out of the forms and it dries. And it's like, man, break out the jackhammer because we got to fix this, but
right, right.
yeah,
And there's so many people that I talk to that I tell them exactly that. I don't make elevator cabs and entrances anymore. I just stick to my elevator sills.
sure.
But you got questions, call me. I'm an
Yeah.
open book. And to me, there's a lot of power in that, you know.
Yeah.
Not power isn't like, it's just, people call and they got questions, and it's great. Why not answer them? Why hold that
Yeah.
information?
Yeah. Well,
And
like I
maybe it's
said,
a part of my life, where it's, you know, it, I don't need to hold on to it. Maybe, I don't know, but
well, I'm sure you see it come back, as you pay it forward. I mean, I'm sure you've got a long list of people you can call anytime you need something, right? Maybe you have a
right,
question, and you probably got a very long list of people that, hey, can you help me think through this, or can you help me, you know, got something I
exactly,
don't know what to do with? Because from what I understand, I mean, I don't ever claim to be an technical expert or knowledgeable about the actual workings of elevators, but I've heard from people who have a lot of experiences. There's no way to know it all. So even the guy with 50, 60, however many years can still find a problem and have to ask.
right, right, exactly,
Yep.
exactly.
Yep. So how did you come up with the idea for Archi-Tread?
So it's not a new idea
Okay.
of putting an overlay on an existing sill.
Okay.
It's been tried by several different people, uh, our company as well.
Sure.
But the adhesives in the past weren't good enough. Um, and the material was typically a 1/4 inch thick.
Wow.
Yeah. That we tried to overlay on top of the existing. So that in itself presented other problems that you either had to raise the doors or buy new doors
Sure.
and, readjust the height of the cabs on each floor. And so it was never really successful. Again, my love for manufacturing and some of the processes that we were doing over the years, um, one called back cutting or V grooving.
Okay.
I just saw the opportunity to incorporate, number one, the groove, which was
Hmm.
always important. So the finish was always the same. And the fact that it's very thin material. So in many cases, there's no need to adjust the doors. We're not impacting anything. And the adhesive that, I worked with 3M closely. We came up with an adhesive that is phenomenal.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I was playing around after I left the company. I was playing around with some thoughts and ideas, and I had some samples made up and literally went back in my barn and started making samples. And that's kind of how and where the idea originated.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
and from there
So,
it just expanded.
sure. Sure. So you really didn't have that idea when you walked out the door and sold, and you were just kind of, I guess, trying to figure out what's my next What's my next thing? I don't know.
Yeah, we were playing around with putting plate on top of sills.
Mm,
When I left the company, um, and I had showed at the time the president, the plate. I said, put the stainless steel plate. He goes, wow, that looks good, but it just didn't look right.
okay.
So the idea of, again, wrapping the sill was there, and I just got lucky, I guess, and was able to combine my love for manufacturing and take that whole concept and develop what I call a sill skin to be able to wrap the entire sill.
Nice.
And the other thought was, we used to provide a fabricated stainless steel sill,
Mm,
which was 1/8 inch plate and welded together with a bunch of stainless steel channels. And we sold a lot of those, and they were very expensive.
right.
But the architects liked them because it was a crisp look, it was a sharp look, square corners.
Yeah.
And my thought was, if I could make a sill similar, but less expensive, I could probably sell a lot more and replace some of the nickel silver that's out there.
Okay.
So that was really the driver. And so I said, if I could wrap aluminum, because aluminum is relatively inexpensive,
Sure.
wrap aluminum and put a finish over the aluminum that the architects would like, and it's also cost effective. That's how the base company started.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And in doing so, I looked at it, I said, well, why can't I do this in the field? I have an aluminum extrusion, I put it over. If I machine this out in the field, so again, I went to the barn and got a couple nickel or old sills and started machining them, and so wow, I could do this in the field. And that really opened the doors.
So tell me a little bit more about that. It sounds like when you say in the field, you're actually taking your machinery, pulling up in front of somebody's building, and actually kind of doing the retrofit right there, rather than
Right.
having to haul something back to, your shop, essentially.
Right. So historically, and again, we had 10 teams doing installs back in my day.
Sure.
And I would get a phone call at night at 6 o'clock. We were replacing that entrance sill, and we chipped the floor. And typically at your lobbies, you got stone,
Sure. Marble.
all high end terrazzo, and it's usually been there for 20 years. So that was always a headache.
Yeah.
So with the new system, to your point, it's really a retrofit in the field, and the benefits are, we bring our equipment in, we machine out the existing groove, we provide an overlay on top. You don't have to remove the doors, so it's a lot less cost of, doesn't
Yeah.
cost a lot to have the doors removed. We don't damage the floor. We actually put a saw cut in front of on the wall side, and you could actually turn the car back over the moment we're done, because it heats that quick.
Wow.
Right. So you can go from a traditional chopping out the sill, which sits in a bed of concrete. An entrance sill typically sits in concrete. So you got to go chop that out with a demo hammer, remove it, clean it all out, set the new sill, put the concrete. That's a 2-day job.
Easily.
Some guys maybe get it done in a day, but you still got to let it cure.
Sure.
Whereas we're done in 4 hours.
Cool.
We look to get 2 openings a day, and it's a cost savings. It's less evasive, less noisy. It's a win-win. It's not for everything.
Sure.
It's not the cure-all, but it definitely has a place in the market. And
Yeah. So pardon my ignorance on, but you're doing this on every single floor, correct? As the floor touches the elevator, or
sometimes
okay.
it's just a lobby opening.
Oh, just okay.
Yeah.
Just depends.
It's not unusual for us to just go and do lobbies, because lobbies are your high-end finish.
Sure, true. I guess you may not have marble on every single floor, or terrazzo, like you say.
Well, typical is a hotel.
Okay.
Hotel's got nice bronze sill, bronze frame,
Okay.
and all the other floors are going to be aluminum and a painted frame.
Okay.
right? So
Sure.
they want to update their lobby, and they're going to wrap the bronze frames with stainless. What are we going to do about the sill?
Okay.
And you watch this day forward, you're going to walk into an elevator and see stainless and look down and see a bronze sill, and you're going to go,
I'll think of you when I
now
see
I
that, right? It's like, okay,
now I know why.
right,
Because nobody wants to deal with the sill anymore.
right,
Number one, it's hard labor.
right.
And I always jokingly say this, but today's mechanics go in an elevator shaft with a laptop.
Sure.
They don't go in, stacking rails and demo hammers and chopping out sills. They don't want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So is that the fact that you can kind of come in, knock it out in 4 hours? Would you say that's one of your, I guess, strategic advantages then, that you've got the ability to change it out without the risk of breaking the floor, without the labor of, like I say, 2 days worth of, I mean, sounds like a huge advantage.
It is. It is. And, at the labor rates for all these majors, which are tremendous labor rates.
Sure.
I mean, I've flown guys all around the country. I mean, my guys have been to Hawaii, they've been to Alaska, they've been to Puerto Rico,
Right.
because even adding the cost of airfare and travel and hotel, it's still more cost effective in many cases than to pay to have a mechanic chop it out and go at risk.
Yeah. 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 So are your men, I guess, unionized
No,
mechanics then? They don't have to
no,
be. Okay.
no, no, no. All our guys are non-union. Well, I do license some people.
Okay.
Um, like I did until COVID hit us, but I had, Southern California, I had licensed people do the install, which were
Okay.
mechanics, licensed
Mhm.
mechanics. I had Northern California, down in Florida, but they don't have to be.
Okay. Because they're not going into the confined spaces and the other.
Right, right.
Yeah.
We still want the elevator company to provide access into the shaft,
Okay.
position the car for us, and then let us do our thing.
Right.
You know, so yeah, it's been, again, it's for some people it's a nice resolve.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it
not
sounds
for
like
everyone.
there's certainly the demand out there, right? Those who want it done right, they can, or they're willing
Right.
to pay for it.
And what, in doing this process, what has come out of it is other situations where people didn't know how to handle it. For example, you know, replacing the lobby, and they put a brand new half-inch tile floor down. And usually I get the phone call when the guy laying the tile gets up to the entrance, and he goes, "Oh boy, we're half inch above the sill. What are we going to do?" With my system, we're actually able to build the sill up a half inch.
Oh, that's cool.
Right. So that solves another problem that, there's not a lot of it, but it solves that problem.
Right.
I was just on the person I was on the phone with before what we were supposed to get in. They have a running clearance issue, which is the distance between the elevator sill, the shaft sill, entrance sill, and the car sill.
Okay.
Right. The maximum is supposed to be 1.25 inches.
Okay.
So on one floor they have a 2-inch gap, and on the floor below it they're 1.5 inches. So again, we've run across these problems. There's a couple different ways to solve it, but with the overlay, my overlay system, we can actually build the sill into the shaft,
Sure. Sure. Little,
make it
just give it a
wider,
little lip. Yeah.
right, to reduce that gap. So it's been fun that way. That's the exciting part for me, is I really look forward to the challenges, solving a lot of these different issues.
Yeah. 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 And it sounds like you get plenty of them. You get a lot of them coming your way. That, I mean, it sounds like everyone's different, right? So it's not like you
Right,
just do a standard approach to
right,
probably any of them. So
yeah.
cool. So as we get close on our time here, got a couple questions I always like to end with, what's would you say is the most important thing you've learned throughout your career?
I go back to, again, just making relationships and just being honest with people and tell them the truth. I mean, to me, that is just the most powerful thing you can do with people. You know, they may not want to hear it, may not like hearing it, but they'll respect you for it. And I tell that to everybody that I meet. You know, if what you want to know is the best thing, is that. Because I tell this, and I'll never forget it, back in the baking business. I'll digress just for a second.
Sure.
But there's one guy that always stunk. You know, he didn't use deodorant. Now everybody would make fun of him behind his back. But the one guy walked up to him and said, you know, you're going to be embarrassed that I'm doing this, but I'm doing it because I respect you. And he said, and he gave him a thing of deodorant and said, use it. You know, and that's difficult for a lot of people to do. A lot of people talk behind your back. Nobody wants to hear that they stink. Sure. But he's got a lot of respect for him that walked up, because he said, listen, people are talking behind your back. And that's always stuck with me. And, you know, I'm not saying run out and go tell everybody they stink, but, you know, sometimes you just got to speak the truth, even though
having the courage to tell the truth is seems to be a lost art in some places. So it's big.
And accept your mistakes, which is the same, kind of the same thing. Hey, I made a mistake. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And most people will be like, okay, I get it. Versus trying to bullshit your way out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the last question I want to ask, and who knows, maybe this will be a little bit of a repeat, but what advice would you give to somebody who's maybe new to the elevator industry, don't even know what they've started into? What would you say to them?
Don't chase the money. Get in the business that you love. And that's really hit home for me, particularly with now that I started my own company. You know, this industry tends to be a more lucrative industry, but don't get in it and chase the money and look to make, you know, a ton of money. Get in it because you love it.
Right.
And it's, you know, the proverbial saying, you know, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And there's a lot of truth to that. Now, I'm living it, you know. So that would be my advice. You know, don't chase the money. Don't get into business because of money. Get into it because you enjoy it.
Right. That's perfect. Scott, thank you for being with me today. I appreciate your time, your wisdom, and I wish you the best as you continue to build your business and continue to build those relationships that you were telling us about.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for listening to the Elevator Careers podcast, sponsored by the Allred Group, a leader in elevator industry recruiting. You can check us out online at elevatorcareers.net. Please subscribe, and until next time, stay safe.